So now that we've looked at nCloth, the next thing we're going to look at is nHair. Now the nice thing about nHair is it has the exact same settings. It still uses the nucleus, so it's got the same properties. Um, Now you can use nHair obviously for hair, and that's cool. That's awesome. And I'll kind of go over it quickly, but we're not going to use it for hair in this class because we're not doing any rendering. And nHair, you need to actually render out the paint effects to make it look good. But I'll give you a quick little overview. Normally what you do when you're dealing with nHair is you want to make a skull cap. So I'm just going to duplicate this guy, kind of like we did for the shorts. And I'm just going to zoom, delete, delete, delete. I love chopping up characters. Delete, delete. There we go. Give him a little skull cap up here. We'll give him kind of like a lion's mane or something like that. So you have your skull cap. I'm going to go ahead and bind that to my head joint. Skin, skin, bind skin. Now let's make it follow along. Then I grab that guy and I'm going to isolate him. So to make nHair, the same kind of process as nCloth. If I go into my FX tab, under nHair we have Create nHair, yay! But I'm going to go into the options for this one. So we have a couple of different options here. The output, yeah, paint effects, NURBS, curves, or both. NURBS curves are the dynamic curves. Those are the ones that actually move and sway and are affected by gravity. Paint effects is the pretty stuff. That's the stuff that'll actually render out when it's time to render. Or you can do both. We're going to do both just so we can see everything. And then you have your U and V. How many follicles do you want per U and V? I usually kick this up a little bit. Passive fill we'll look at in a second. And then hairs per clump. This is how many strands of hair you want per follicle. The points on the hair is how many points you'll have on your curve. The longer the curve, usually the more number of points you'll want, just to make it be able to flow a lot better. And then the length is the length of the hair. This guy's huge, so I'm going to crank it up. And then I'm going to click Create Hair. And that's going to give me this cool little Maya hair. Yay! Are you impressed? I'll hide him. Ooh, that looks really freaky, doesn't it? So now if I hit play, you'll see that hair falls down. We have hair. Yay! Now, obviously it's falling through the head, so we can go ahead and make this a passive collider. nCloth, passive collider. So I'll go ahead and make it actually collide with the hair. And now we have all these cool new things down here. We have our hair system, follicles, and output curves. Output curves are the dynamic curves. And the paint effects. So I'm going to go ahead and hide the paint effects just so we can see what we're doing a little bit better. That's just the pretty stuff that renders out at render time. You'll see these curves are blue. Blue curves are your dynamic curves. These are the ones that are going to do all the dynamic goodness. Now if you want to make it longer or shorter, under nHair, they have Scale Hair Tool. Zoop. So if you want to make your hair longer or shorter, that's saying go ahead and do it. We'll give this guy a big old mohawk. Yay! So, that's our hair. Kind of cool, kind of simple. If you hit play, it'll fall down. Now, the thing to remember about hair, when you're dealing with hair on the head or something like that, every curve is actually two curves. You have the blue curve, that's the dynamic curve. And then you have the current curve. Oops, that's the one we're in. The start curve is a dark blue curve. This is the one you can actually modify if you want to style your hair. This is the start position. This is what it'll always come back to when you hit rewind on play. So if you wanted to give them something like maybe a Superman swoosh, let's grab this front one. And it does give you a couple of different ways to change the hair. Under modify curves, you can straighten it, smooth it, curl it, bend it, do different things. But I like using lock length because that'll lock the length of this curve. So now if I grab any verts in here, I can move the whole thing around. Whee! Let's go in here and give them a cool little Superman swoosh. Kind of over exaggerated. So now when I hit play, I get nothing. Wah, 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 wah. Well, that's because we're still showing the start curves. The start curves are not dynamic. These are the ones that it's always going to return to. So if I go back up to nHair and I say show the current curve, the light blue ones, now you'll see these are dynamic and they're starting from that position. But they're still dynamic, so they're still going to fall. Now what you can do, and I do this quite a bit, let's give them something funky. I don't want to do a straight mohawk. Let's give them a cool style like that. You can actually hit play and let it settle some. Stop. Stop it. Let's give them that. That'd be cool. And I'm going to go back into my nHair and display my start position curves. Nope, Z back. Grab my hair system and say set start position from current. And it's going to make me select all of them, of course, make my life difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my follicles and then go into select hierarchy. There we go. So now, whenever I hit rewind, that's where it's going to start at. Remember, I selected the follicles, not the output curves. The output curves are the dynamic one. The follicles all have our original curves, under the start curves underneath them. So now whenever I hit play, it's going to start right from there with the simulation. But now what I can do is I can go into the hair system itself, and you'll see that the collisions, it has the same flags, and the dynamic properties are the same. We still have our stretch resistance, our compression resistance, our bend resistance, but we also have start curve attract. Now what's that sound kind of like? Our input mesh attract for nCloth. So this is how closely it's going to follow those start curves. Basically like putting mousse in your hair. If I turn this up and hit play, it doesn't look like it's dynamic anymore, does it? But if I grab that head joint, use my interactive playback, you can see that it's still dynamic, just has hair gel. So that's how you can kind of start to style hair. You can go through and you can style each one and do things like that, but it still really doesn't look like hair, does it? It looks like hair plugs for men. I am not only a founder, I am a member. Yay! So how do you go about making it actually look like some cool hair? Well, under nHair, we have another paint tool. Paint hair follicles. So if I go in here, I get all kinds of settings. For the paint mode, we have create follicles or create passive follicles. Now, follicles are dynamic. Remember, anything dynamic is going to slow your system down. You don't want to have every single hair follicle being dynamic. But what you can do is paint passive follicles. Passive follicles are kind of cheaters. They just follow the closest one and they do blend, but they're not actually dynamic. So you can kick this up. Go in here, make sure you're on add, value of 1. And I can actually just paint in hair. Ha ha ha. Just think if you could do this in real life. You would be rich. So now you see I'm starting to get it making look a little bit better. Let's see how that looks. And you see that now we have these green curves. The green ones are the passive follicles. These are the follow the leaders. You can't edit them. They don't have start curves, anything like that. But they do start to fill in the head. And you'll see when I hit play, it's going to be slower now. Oh, I got hair gel in. Let's do this way. Jugga jugga jugga. We're not gonna take it. No, we ain't gonna take it. So you see we're starting to get some cool looks now, aren't we? Now still, let's go ahead and open up the paint effects so we can see how it would look at render time. Still looking kind of weak, isn't it? Still looking like hair plugs for men. Well, inside of the hair follicle, we also have the hair system. We also have this top one called clump and hair shape. Now this is how many hairs per clump, and you can change this and thicken it up, but you notice it's not really spreading them out that much. To do that, you use your hair width, or your clump width too. You see, you can start to spread those out to fill it up a little bit. Now this is still looking like hair plugs for men. Remember, this guy is huge. He's huge. So I'm going to hide my follicles. I'm going to go grab my skin. Grab my geo. There we go. And I may need to go in and paint some more hair follicles. Now this guy is so big. Let's go 100. I'm not going to do the back. I'm just going to concentrate on the front here. And let's bring back the paint effects. You notice the paint effects always updates. There we go. We're starting to get somewhere. Now let's go back into the hair system. And let's maybe make this clump width 2. Remember, you can always go bigger than the slider. There we go. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Now you also have clump width scale with the slider. Right now it's tapering off as it gets towards the ends. That's why we're getting to more of a spike look. You can actually kind of set this to spread it out even more or less. You can really point it out, do cool things with it. Ooh, can I give it curl? Whee! Gonna give it some cool curl. So you have these different things you can play around with. And see how now it's starting to thicken up quite a bit. So that's kind of a basic overview of nHair. In all honesty, if you want to do the nHair for the project, I'm cool with it. Just remember, for your play blast, all I care about is the curves so that your computer doesn't fart at you. You can hide the paint effects and just show the curves. It just needs to be a dynamic joint chain or a dynamic hair system for the project. So that's kind of a cool overview on how you can make nHair. It's pretty cool, pretty easy. It just takes a lot of tweaking once you get it done, and that's when you're going to go into your hair system. And just like your end cloth, you're going to deal with your dynamic properties, Hair is usually not stretchy, so I always turn my stretch resistance way up, my compression resistance way up. Be careful with the twist resistance. Sometimes it can really wig it out because sometimes your hair will twist a little bit and that resistance will make it freak out. So that's kind of a baseline for what I do for my hair. And then do your play blast and you're all set. Cool. And next we're going to look at the other way you can do your hair project, and that's by making a dynamic hair chain for the back loincloth, and you can actually compare how a hair system works versus a non-cloth system. Cool, cool.